And we're back with diversity champion Torin Ellis and industry analyst Madeline Laurano. Let's talk about the dangers a little bit more. As an outsider looking in, it felt like there was a lot of legislation that came through, whether it was Illinois, New York, et cetera, about these laws, which I think created some fear. What's your sense right now in terms of the dangers of getting caught with using AI and finding bias? What's at risk for a company?
I think the company's at risk, and that's what they're starting to realize, and that's the fear. Because, we're all friends with Keith Sonderling and the former commissioner of the EEOC, and what he'll say, which is their experience with the government, is that there's two questions you have to ask when you're talking about bias. The first question is, where's the data coming from? That's on the vendor. Second question is, how is this data being used? That's on the employer. And at the end of the day, the one responsible for bias and AI introducing bias is always going to be the employer. So they know that. So it makes the conversation scarier, I think, for a lot of employers. And they realize that with all these regulations, they're spending $1 million with this vendor, but they're responsible at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it also makes the vendor selection process more important than ever before.
Yeah, no question. Well, and that being said, I think what we've heard from practitioners who have been using thus far successfully is that the systems aren't making the decisions; they're just there to assist.
Yes,
and they're assisting in areas that take a lot of the load off of the recruiters, the hiring managers, or what have you. So to be able to start to kind of like walk this in, to be able to start using technology, that has been kind of from what we've heard thus far, and saying that these HR can be afraid, but they cannot be slow, because if they are slow, what's the impact on their organization? And also building talent when you've got competitors that are out there who are using technology, who are moving faster, who are keeping their recruiters for longer because the recruiters don't have to do the administrivia that they used to do before, right? So this seems like this could become a new ecosystem that really impacts and helps many companies.
Yeah, but I think the way that you just framed that is a little challenging, because again, HR has decision making, but their purview of decision making is not necessarily in the TA side. So when we look at TA investing in technology that's going to make the process better for them, I don't know if HR has as much of an influence on that decision, yes or a no. So I hear you
depending on the company,
depending on the organization. I just think that the HR side, when I think about the HR side and the report work that Madeline and I did, I think about where do they have control? They have control over compensation. They have control over policy and procedure. They have control over how benefits are deployed in the organization.
Internal mobility.
What benefits are being offered in the organization. So how can we personalize the stakeholders' experience in the organization so that we do keep them more engaged? We unlock that productivity for them, and they decide that I want to stay in this organization. So it's not that HR doesn't have a decision. I just think that their influence on the AI selection or technology is a bit limited when you get outside of their scope of responsibility.
Yeah. I'm becoming more limited. I think for a lot of them, when you introduce an AI counsel at an organization and they're coming in and saying, wait, hold on, how is this being used? Let me look carefully at this. There's one piece of this conversation that I think is really important that we talk a lot about when it comes to DE&I and reducing bias with AI, and it's frontline workers. And we talk so much about professional hiring, and we're kind of thinking about it through that lens. It's been a real challenge for me. I mean, we've done podcasts on the frontline worker piece, and that is a completely different experience that has been completely ignored by organizations up until a few years ago.
I want to pivot real quick to the vendor side of things. And you mentioned that ultimately the responsibility is on the employer. How do vendors look at that conversation? Is it well, we're good, it's on you, or are they having uncomfortable conversations with employers saying, okay, it's on me, so I'm going to really double check what you're doing? Talk about the perspective of the vendors in this reality.
Yeah, so from the vendor's perspective, the sales cycle is taking longer than it was taking, especially during the pandemic, where it's like, I'll buy these 5 things and implement them tomorrow. Now we're seeing sales cycles that are 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years. And it's because the employer is nervous and saying, we want some language to protect us put into these contracts. Some vendors are amazing, as we know, and work very well with clients, especially if they're not public companies. There's really no risk to them working and trying to figure out how to make their clients and prospects feel safe with them, and others that are pushing back and not working well through that. But I think overall, the sales cycle is taking a lot longer because employers are nervous.
Where are we with maybe a third-party auditing solution that can look at both sides or give approval? Are we anywhere near getting to that place? Because that seems like a logical journey to take for everyone.
Like a standard in the industry. I think that's coming. I definitely think it's coming. I think we all know who should be the person to kind of do that audit. We won't mention his name, but I think we know who that should be. But I will say there are IOs that have spun off. Eric Seidel, who was with Modern Hire for a long time, he's kind of spun out and built an auditing, essentially an auditing company using technology, but also using services to audit providers. And I think a lot of others are doing that too. People that really understand AI. But it's hard when you've got a lot of people that have individual brands building it. We do need a standard in this industry.
So here, just quick tip for vendors. Get those already in place so that you can make the sales cycle goes fast.
Yeah.
Right. You can have these third parties already in place and auditing your tech, and then the standards on how to actually put those in. And then also, if you don't use these standards, here are the danger points. Right. So I think that's where we are going. I hope we're going. But I think, and tell me what you think. Having third parties as opposed to somebody in-house saying that we're auditing things, I just personally, I'm a cynic. I can't trust that.
Yeah.
So it feels like we're going to have an entirely new industry that's going to be third-party auditing of all of these vendors to ensure, to pretty much put their seal of approval on to some extent, and then give that kind of like breath of fresh air to the, okay, we can start to use this new technology. Do you see that coming, and is it soon? That's the big question.
I see it coming, and I think there is more cynicism now about vendors having their own ethics. Like every vendor has an ethics committee, and it's like we all roll our eyes. So I think, no. I do think it has to be third party, 100%. I think my fear, and I think it's coming. I think it has to be coming. My fear, I think we need like an industry standard around who that third party is. Yeah. That's what I want for our industry. I think it's going to get tricky if we see a bunch of independent people doing this, making money from the vendors, making money on the corporate side, and we're going to start to question a little bit about, and it's going to be difficult. I don't envy that position of, individuals doing that, but we absolutely need a third party. I would stand behind it. I think we need that.
We've had it for years, though, in OFCCP and AEOC. I mean, we've had these advisors and these auditors and so on and so forth. So you would expect that to happen. I'm just incredibly surprised that those old guard advisors don't already have products that are in place.
I think it's coming.
I hope it comes fast.
Yeah.
And that was Madeline Laurano, founder at Aptitude Research, and Torin Ellis, the principal at the Torin Ellis Brand. Guys, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us on.
Appreciate you both.